Hello folks, welcome back to the channel and thank you very much for joining me once again. You are most welcome. Today we are going to have a look at the new, not entirely brand new, but it's a reboxed updated version of Italeri's Jaguar GR1/GR3. They're kit number 1459. Brand new out, just been released in the last week or so. But I thought it'd be interesting. We'll have a look at this kit. It's quite a good reputation, in fairness, from what I can gather. But you'll remember that I also recently, not too long ago anyway, a month or two ago, we did a review of the old Hasegawa Jaguar, which I just so happen to have handily with us here. So I thought what we'd do is we'll focus on the Italeri, but at the end we'll have a look at the two and have a look at see how they actually compare sprue to sprue. Just be interesting. Obviously we've got new markings in the Italeri kit, which I'll come to in a minute, but Hasegawa has been regarded by many to be one of the favourites really. A relatively nice build, and yeah, the only thing that was a bit odd about it was it's got the international slightly wrong on the actual way it's depicted, because it's the Jaguar GR1 or the Jaguar International, and the International being the one the French used. And there's some confusion about which weapons they think go on which ones. We've kind of covered that already. Anyway, we'll focus on the new kit, the Italeri. We'll have a good look at that. It's brand new, it's completely unopened. I have no idea what's inside. I have no idea at all. Hopefully it's a Jag though. But we'll look at the two later, so I'll put that to one side. Let's get looking into this then. I'll zoom you in so you get a proper look at this. So we've got some really nice new box art, which I must admit looks very, very nice. Looks like 54 Squadron, Cultural Squadron there. Bit of blurb on the side. This was reissued by Italeri a number of times, and it's also been issued by Revell. And it's known to be a decent kit, so we shouldn't have too many problems. This side, we've got this rather nice, again it's the 54 Squadron scheme I think, as per the box art, just showing it inside profile. And there's a whole host of decals. But this is what really is the new and interesting thing about this kit. It's the new decal set. So we've got, as I mentioned, number 54 Squadron based at Cultural in 2005. He's only a couple of years before they retired the plane. Same, but this time also Cultural, but this time 16 Squadron. Then we've got 6 Squadron, Operation Desert Storm in Oman in 1991, which is Operation Granby. And then we've got the 41st Squadron at Cultural, also in 91, shortly after that. And you can see this is quite interesting because you've got a sort of worn out looking Gulf War service tank, fuel tank underneath. And then you've also got the parade livery, the sort of retro Operation Granby livery for the last year, 2007, 2008 I think it was. And they did a sort of a tribute livery to the earlier one for 6 Squadron again. So this one is paying tribute to this one, if you see what I mean. And they look really nice, don't they? So, it's not a kit I know. We've got the colour call-outs here on the back. I'm not sure what it's going to be like inside. Some interesting colour call-outs there for sure. And it's recommending Italeri's own acrylic paints, which I think we'll just ignore. Anyway, something I've not seen before, so it's something new to me, so it's quite interesting. I have to say that this is very much a last minute purchase. I had this on order and then changed my mind. And then the very last minute I changed my mind again, decided I would order it because I'd heard it was going to be quite decent. And I did pick it up for a very good price. I actually paid less than £17 delivered for this, so I got it at a really good rate. So I won't do an advert for the people that sold it to me. I think it was on eBay though. So anyway, let's have a look what we've got inside. Now, for those of you that don't know, Jaguar, I should just give a quick bit of history here. The Jag was basically a ground attack aircraft, and very much in the wake of the cancellation of the TSR-2 nuclear strike bomber. And there's things about the Jaguar, if you look at it closely, that you can see a lot of influence from the TSR-2. And I'm thinking in particular of the high wing design, the sort of shape of the nose, the way that the aircraft has this sort of very sleek style, very pointy looking aircraft. and it just has like it's almost like a scaled down TSR2, even down to slightly different at the back, perhaps more reminiscent of the Phantom in the way they design the engine exits under the tail. So it's almost like a TSR2 with a Phantom tail on it, or rather a TSR2 shaped tail, scaled down, but the rest of the back end, the tailplanes look very Phantom. So it's an interesting aircraft, and clearly British Aircraft Corporation, who with Dassault Corporation in France, they cooperated to build this aircraft and created this company Sepacar, and it was a very successful plane for both countries, and of course it ended up in the Gulf War being used by both France and Britain, and a very good aircraft. One of its key strengths, I think I mentioned before, was that this was designed to operate against the Warsaw Pact. Which obviously became no longer an issue in the 90s, but it could land on very, very rough landing strips and runways. It was tested in the UK. It landed on the M55 motorway between Preston and Blackpool. No problem at all, and it can operate. There's some footage you can see on YouTube of it being tested at Warton in Lancashire, where they developed it in the UK. And it was landing across, not down the runway, but across between the runways, across on the rough grassy areas in between. And it's got this very sort of forgiving suspension and a very strong landing gear, made it ideal for if your main airfields have been knocked out. This would be a very, very forgiving and easy to operate aircraft in difficult conditions. So that is the background. Let's have a look at the kit then. So it's got an end opening box. It's very much in the Rebel style, actually. Not very keen on. But anyway, let's see how we get on. Blade into there. There we go. Maybe we need that again. I don't know. Here we go then. It's going to be quite a treat to have something I've never seen before. Something completely new. And there we go. Decals. Right, let's pop that to one side so it doesn't get in the way too much. Over there. So we've got instructions. It looks like there's just 2 sprues in fact, so it's kind of similar to the Hasegawa. It looks a bit reminiscent of the Hasegawa on first impression, but anyway. So we get a little bit of history. Ground attack aircraft from the 1960s. Could reach Mach 1.6 top speed, used in various missions in the Balkans and Iraq, and it had this. It was very much old school. The Jag. It was wasn't fly-by-wire. It was an old sort of hydraulics and pneumatics and traditional sort of systems, not done by computers. But they were updated a little bit later on when they got to the late 90s. They started bringing on some computerized systems. It's still basically a seat of the pants, you know, hydraulically controlled aircraft. So very much the last of the old school, really. So we have got, let's simulate. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll just have a quick look at the decals first, because they are one of the primary things about this plane that in this form make it a little bit different. So this is completely new decals for this edition that's been brought out. So we've got the 54 Squadron first of all. Secondly, we have got the one that's got the Saint on it, which I always forget which squadron that is. Just excuse me 1 second. So that is the 16th Squadron with the cross keys and the Saint on it, and the grey flashes. Then we've got the 41st Squadron, the one that has the red tail, which is quite nice. That's the one that's got the mixture of schemes, red tail, camo, and then the used Gulf War tank. And then lastly, we've got that like a tribute scheme down the bottom, and then we've got some, just a few, not many, stencils for the fuel tank, etc. Quite nice decals. Printed by Zanchetti, I can't read this, by Zanchetti, you'll probably see this better than I can, let's zoom you in, you'll read it yourself. Zanchetti Buscano, is it? I can't quite make that out with my glasses. But they're very, very sharp, and they're nice colours, and those are beautiful decals, I've got to say, very nice looking. Can't remember the last time I used the Italeri decals, but I think they'll be okay, they look nice. So that's that. Right, now let's take a look at the destructions. Starts off with a sprue tree call out, quite straightforward here on the left hand side. Then we've got building up the ejector seat, which seems to have some sort of moulded in seat belts here. Might be worth thinking about replacing that, I don't know, we'll have a look at the plastic. Very simple, kind of old school. You can, by the way, I should have said that this original version of the kit, it was actually originally brought out in 1996 from the top of my head. So in fact, yeah, not a new tooling by any stretch of the imagination. It's been around for quite a while. So there we have it. So I'm just trying to get my lights sorted out here. Let's get the lights on. So you get a maximum. There we go. So that's a bit better. Thought it was a bit dark. So yeah, you can sort of see that it's quite a sort of an old school style. So that's why it's from '96. But it goes together quite well, they say. So let's just have a look at it and see what we find. So quite a simple cockpit tub. I think there's a decal that goes on here. Is there a decal though? Instrumentation decals, is that true? Or am I leading you astray? I think I might be being optimistic there. I think they're just calling it out as a colour B. So that's obviously some sort of pretty much black in the cockpit of a Jag. Just that big black cave really. Then we've got the two halves of the rear fuselage and the engines going in. Again, very simple arrangement here. You've got the alternative choice of having the cockpit open or closed. I think it's I don't think it's two pieces. Sorry, I don't think it's two different types of cockpit, it's just open or closed. It's two separate pieces, so you decide how you configure it, basically. Then you've got a nose, it's got the rangefinder nose obviously, with the window in the front, and you've got your pitot head going on the front there. Two separate halves, which is not ideal. They wouldn't do it like that today, would they? But anyway, quite simple, straightforward. Gets stuck onto the main front of the nose, and you pop your canopy in like so. Sorry, my alert is going on for an email or something. We're just going to switch that off so we don't get disturbed. Right, so then, over on this side we have got the interestingly slightly ugly, aren't they, these overwing pylons that the Jaguar had, very much mimicking what had happened with the BAC Lightning earlier. Yeah, it doesn't really do anything for the lines of the aircraft, I've got to say, or the way it looks. But anyway, so they actually mount on. You've got sidewinders, it looks like, that go on the top there. And then you get your tail planes and your vertical stabiliser going in with the rudder on the back, all one piece. They're kind of, I think I'm right in saying they're Tailor-on this aircraft, aren't they? Can't remember if they're, I know they are on the Tornado, but I think they are on the Jag, Tailor-on. I think they're independently moving tails. And we've got the intakes going in here. Again, very conventional. It's almost like a matchbox kit the way it's laid out, quite straightforward really. And you've got your Mauser cannons going in, twin Mauser cannons on both sides going in underneath. Then we're moving on to our front nose leg gear and the main gear as well. And then those go in, and you've got your gear. This is this gear I talked about, this very sort of strong, robust undercarriage that gave the Jaguar this characteristic sort of brutishness, which made it very good for operating off grassy fields, you know. Those all go in, completely the actuators, and there's also the air brakes and the gear doors. Air brakes being just behind the main undercarriage gear doors themselves. I've got a arrestor hook going in there, I've got a couple of vents, and there's strakes that go, you have strakes on either side actually on the Jag. You see one here, and the other one goes in here. That's kind of it really, and then you're off to your weapons. So you've got a couple of like Hindenburg style tanks, 350 litre tanks I think they are. They're not that huge on the Jag, and then there's a big central one. It's a recon pod though in this case, and there is a ALQ 119, which I think is an air-to-air missile. And that's it really. So then we're on onto our different schemes, and they go into quite a lot of detail here. So you've got this rather nice 54 squadron scheme with the sort of almost like the New Avengers style of griffin on the tail. Looks quite nice. Quite like that one. And alternatively, we've got the 16 squadron. This is the one that's got the Saint and the cross keys on the tail. And that's a squadron that used to be with Buccaneers, I think, in the late 60s and very early 70s, and then they switched over to JAGS and went to Coltishall. I think they were at Larbrook, if I remember correctly, with Buccaneers in the start of the 70s. So obviously you've got the same scheme on these two aircraft with the sort of it's like a dark grey, flat dark grey they call it, or dark sea grey, and then flat medium grey underneath. Then we've got the Operation Desert Storm, Operation Granby, it should be called really. It's not quite correct, is it, technically speaking? But anyway, interestingly on this, you've got the tanks still in the sort of dark green, flat dark green or RAF dark green, and then later on the other option, of course, you've got the opposite where the recon pod is still in the Gulf colours. So this would often happen. It wasn't considered a priority to paint the tanks, and they'd swap them back and forth. So you could often get a tank that was sort of in their own theatre colours, so to speak. And obviously you've got this is being the Desert Storm Jag, it's in desert pink basically, as you'd expect. And then obviously you've got this 75th anniversary 41 squadron, very attractive scheme. I like that scheme. Red spine, red tail, and it's got the wraparound camo. So that is quite a nice. That's quite a nice scheme. I like that one. Might be tempted to go with that. Now, finally, the tribute to the sort of parade livery, as they call it. It's the tribute to the Gulf War scheme. It was done in 2007. And again, a complete overwrap of desert pink right all over. That is the instructions. Yes, it's not nothing too testing in there, is there really? It's very basic really. But we will see how we get on with the plastic. I think these two kits are going to be more similar than I thought they were. Let's have a look. That. Okay. Put that to one side. It's just a single bag. Let's open that up. See what we got. Nice and easy, and there's just one bag, isn't it? Now, we'll have a look at this and then we'll get the other one out and just have a look at the two, just see how they actually compare. I don't think they're the same, but it might be interesting. I suspect there's a style similarity. I can tell straight away the way that they have depicted the mounting of the wings. It's very similar. So let's have a look. So this is Iteleri's new kit, new issue, boxing. So, start with fuselage down here, rear fuselage I should say, and it's quite nice. It's got some good panel line detail, all recessed, and nice gear bay detail. Can you see that? That's surprisingly good actually. Quite impressed with that. Yeah, that's it's certainly better than the Matchbox, isn't it? All the early Airfix for that matter. And you've got your tail planes here, and obviously your main wing, which is completely moulded in one piece. So it's not going to take you long to build this, is it? It's it's got all the key features are sort of pre-moulded in one piece, whether it's the tail planes or the main wing. That is quite nice. I don't think I'd go for a version with the over-wing pylons. I think they look a bit ugly, to be honest. Then over here we've got that central area that goes between the engines on the underside of the fuselage, and just to the right there you can see the air brakes. Here we've got the engines themselves, and they're quite nicely moulded, aren't they, here? The jet pipes, and we've got the landing nose gear cover here with the twin headlights in it. We've got some fairly nicely moulded landing gear legs, well detailed. It's a nice little kit actually. A little bit of flash on some of the, not so much on the parts, but on some of the mold. You see here where the wheels are, a little bit flashy on the actual sprue gate, but the parts seem okay. Are they weight on wheels? Don't think they are. Not really, no. It's quite hard to see at this range, you might be seeing better than me, but anyway, don't think so. Obviously we've got the instrument panel there, and we've got the intakes here. I mean, the way it goes together is very familiar, I've got to say. It's very sort of similar to Matchbox stroke Hasegawa. Let's have a look on the other sprue. We've got the nose section, which does look good, I've got to be honest. Nicely detailed here, lots of panel line detail there. You've got your cockpit tub here for the pilot. That's the absolute tip of the nose here, and two halves, which I wish was in one piece, but anyway, there we go. And then we've got, we've got some interesting, what have we got there? Bombs that don't look right for the Royal Air Force, I've got to say. There's no way that these are RAF bombs, that's a French, I'm pretty sure that's a French weapon. And then you've got your one-piece tail here, complete with the avionics, radar, antenna built into it, which is why it has the bar across it. It's very nice, isn't it? The pylons look good as well, they're very crisply done. It's beautiful, really. Considering it's 1996 as a moulding, tooling, I think that's really nice. Look at the Mauser cannon here. That's very nice. Sidewinders here. Twin missiles. Yeah, it's actually very nice. Would have been nice to have some bombs, which I think you do get in the Hasegawa kit, don't you? So we'll just have a look at this clear parts, because that's pretty much it, and then we'll get the Hasegawa out and just do a side-by-side, a tale of two JAGS, and see how they compare. Let's just have a look at these clear parts first. Last but not least. Oh yeah, they're quite nice, quite nice. Not the most, they're quite distorty. You'll see this, I think, with the camera. Have a look at this. I'm not sure about that, but they're very clear and bright, nicely finished. Yeah, but you can see they are a lot of distortion as it moves, you know, through the angles. You can see that it's not the most perfect clear parts, but there's no scratches or anything. Oh, looks like we've got this coming apart, doesn't matter. But there's no scratching or anything like that, and it is 72nd scale, so I suppose we have to keep our expectations a little bit in check. But overall, it's yeah, it's a nice little kit, isn't it? You could build that in a weekend quite easily, couldn't you? I think, no problem at all. So let's have a little look. Just put them aside, and we're going to now bring in the Hasegawa one to do a tale of two JAGS and just see how they compare. Might be the same. I don't think they are. Don't think they can. Right, well, this was one I prepared earlier, because I've been in here before. Got some tape on it now. Mustn't mix them up, of course, that would be tragic. Later, untold problems later. I want to actually make one of these, because I've got this 48 scale Jag, the Airfix one, which is not a nice kit, and not impressed with that at all. It doesn't look great, and I need to get rid of that and make room in the cabinet. So let's just have a look at how, yeah, they are quite different actually. So let's just do a side by side, keeping, mustn't mix them up, whatever I did. So the little sprue, the big sprue is the new kit, the Italeri, the little sprues are the Hasegawa, must remember. So let's just have a look at, this, having lost the controls, where are they? There they are. Let's just let you see the two nose sections, for example. This is the Hasegawa in my right hand. Italeri clear parts, and this is, right, so now in my right hand we've got the Italeri on the bigger sprue. So we're going to have trouble here. Just zoom this out slightly. There we go. Now then, Can we get this to work? Can we? There we go. So there we are, side by side comparison. You can tell that the Italeri has got slightly more detail, I'd say, slightly more. And you've got to remember that this is definitely an REF version, whereas the Hasegawa is sort of trying to be both the Jaguar International and the Jaguar GR1, which there are some subtle differences between the two, especially around the nose and obviously the weapons and things. But you can clearly see there's also these nose parts as well. I can just find them again. Yeah, so they're just there, evading me. The nose tip parts, can we see that? There. And again, there's a little bit more detail. It's a little bit more defined, I'd say, on the Italeri than the Hasegawa. I'm not sure if you can make that out. Let's just try and get you a bit closer. Make that. Can you see that? So this one is the Italeri and this one is the Hasegawa. Very, very subtle differences. There's not a lot in it, to be honest. So look at the tails. Tail. So this is Italeri, this is Hasegawa. And interesting because they've got this little fillet on the tail on the Hasegawa version, which again I think is the French font creeping in with its influence a bit too much perhaps. Yeah, it's on both sides, that little fillet here, which is definitely not on the Italeri one, so I think that's the French Jaguar creeping in there. But yeah, and then one thing I was really keen to see as a comparison was the wing. Let's have a look at the rear fuselage, because I think that'll be quite telling as well. I'd like them in a different style of sprue, otherwise I'd really get these horribly mixed up. Now, let's have a look at these. I'll have to zoom in out for this. So now we're looking at. Do that one. Looks say I like the weapons on the Hasegawa better, but I'm not sure about the rest of it. If we can just get that in like that, side by side. Can you see that now? Yes, there we go. I think that's a sort of a good angle to see it at. Bring it in a little bit more. There we go. And again, I've got to be honest, the Italeri has got more defined panel lines. They're deeper, more obvious. There's a lot of difference in the detail. Although, in some areas, again it's quite subtle, but in some areas there's a little bit more detail, fine detail on the surface of the Hasegawa, which is the top one as you're looking at it. I wonder if you can see what I'm talking about if I bring you in closer. Just have a look here. For example, here, at the top of the entry of the intakes as they're going into the engine. Look at the difference there. Can you see this? There's some fine, sorry here, there's some very fine like hatches that don't appear to be on the Italeri out of interest. And here, I'm just too close, here, this band, there's a bit more detail there than there is on this one. And yet we have a more detailed bay underneath on the Italeri than we have here on the Hasegawa. So there is quite a few subtle changes. The profile seems a little bit different, doesn't it? It looks a bit fatter here on the Hasegawa than it does here on the Italeri. It just looks a bit slimmer somehow. Very subtle differences. Quite interesting actually, doing that side by side comparison. And then of course we've got the wing. I talked about the wing design. And they have actually taken a slightly different way about it. It's not quite as I imagined. I'll zoom you out for this. So, perhaps more. We'll zoom, that's it. put them side by side here. Can we see that? So this top one is the new Italeri, and the bottom one here is Hasegawa. So they've gone for a different position and a way to join the spine. They're both a one-piece wings in similar style. Are they actually the same? Yeah, not quite exactly the same. The Hasegawa seems to be a little bit deeper, just a fraction deeper than the Italeri here. There's not much in it, and yeah, it's they've just positioned the join in the spine in a different place. I am suspicious, to be honest, that the Hasegawa here might look less obvious a join being where it is than this one is. The shape of this, I'm not sure about the wisdom of that as a cutout. Depends on the fit though, doesn't it? Because obviously it goes into the top of the fuselage here. Goes into the top of the fuselage at that angle shape there. If that's a really good fit, then we're okay, but is it? I'm sure there are some people that have made this kit that are watching will be shouting at the screen. Interesting. But yeah, they're actually very similar in many ways. I'm just wondering if there's any other parts we should really have a little peek at, like the engines. Let's look at those jet pipes again. Jet pipes. We've got jet pipes. Here we go. So it's the Hasegawa here at the bottom, and here is the Italeri. I've got to be honest, the Hasegawa has got a little bit more detail. It's got like the supports between the outer and inner tube of the jet pipe exit. Can you see that? They're like little dividers, or spokes almost. It looks like spokes at this angle. But further up, they're kind of similar, but there's more depth here on the Italeri. Lots of subtle differences, really. So, However, here I am showing you all these changes, but subtle differences between the two options. The biggest problem is that this Hasegawa kit is now quite hard to get hold of, whereas the Italeri has just been issued and is now widely available. For the time being, anyway. I do prefer the weapons because here on the Hasegawa we've got some bombs and we've got Matra rocket launchers, which we don't have on the RAF Jag, but that's probably a fair reflection of the kind of duties and roles it was undertaking as depicted, you know. So it's interesting stuff, very interesting stuff. I'm just wondering how the clear parts compare. If we can have a quick look at that. And you have to bear with me for a second. So I think we have a bit of a bag crisis as usual. So just bear with me. There we go. Carefully reposition that back. And clear part. Right, we won't bother getting them out. They look actually very similar in fairness. The Hasegawa looks a fraction clearer, if I'm honest with you. If I'm honest. Anyway, I thought it was just an interesting thing to just compare those two things, because they are obviously very similar kit, same, but with subtle changes. I think Hasegawa were trying to do a kit that would capture the French market as well as the UK one. But the Jaguar is, I mean, it was retired in 2008-2009. Most of the Jaguars that were in the Royal Air Force are still, I believe, are still kept by them. They haven't been sold on, I don't think. And they're over at RAF Cosford in the bunkers on the far side of the airfield. Just in case we might need them in the future. I mean, they were wheeled out at a show, I think, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. There's one that's painted in that beautiful tiger scheme. And it looks absolutely fantastic. In fact, it's another one of those aircraft, a bit like the Harrier, that I think was, to be honest, I think it was retired a little bit prematurely. Anyway, I'm digressing. So what do we think? A tale of two JAGs. I'm not going to call one over the other. I'm trying to remember the rating I gave to the Hasegawa. I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 actually. In fact, it was either 8.5 or 9. Now, what do I think of the Italeri? Well, really, I think it's kind of the same, isn't it? I think I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10, I'll be frank with you. Because you're getting some really cracking decals and schemes. That's what makes the kit worth buying, I think. It's an old kit, an old tool kit. But it's an oldie but a goodie. Everybody that's built it says it goes together okay, no problems really. Perhaps just need a little bit of filler here and there. I'm not sure about the join on that top of the wing, you might need to just fill that. But it's a lovely looking kit. Yeah, I think it's a 9 out of 10, especially considering I paid less than £17 delivered to my door. That is not much money at all. I mean, it's just buttons. And you get 5 options, so what is there not to like? If you like a real meaty big cat Jag, then currently I wouldn't at all dissuade you from trying to get the Hasegawa, because that's got other options with the bombs and the rockets and things. Matter rockets, ground attack. So if you want to depict one that's from the earlier era, perhaps go for the Hasegawa. I know you've got yeah, these are all the sort of later. This is all sort of Gulf War and beyond to the present. Well, I'm going to say the present day, to the day of retirement. Perhaps if you want to depict an early Jag, go for the Hasegawa, and if you want to depict a sort of Gulf War or later Jag, go for the Italeri. But I have to say, for the money, that's a lovely kit, lovely artwork, great decals, 9 out of 10. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. Hope you'll give me 10 out of 10 with a nice thumbs up, if you don't mind. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, you should definitely do so, because if you want to see more videos like this, I mean, this only came out, I think I only had it delivered 24 hours ago, less. You'll get some cutting edge reviews, and you'll also get the exact opposite. You'll get some very old stuff from the 70s and 60s in some cases. But I just like to pick on kits that I think personally I find quite interesting. One or two of them have got a backstory that I've got connections with. Not that many, but one or two interesting ones. But if you are a subscriber already, don't forget to ding the notification bell, because then you'll get early warning as soon as I'm uploading a new video. And I just say to you, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the review and you found it interesting. Please stay tuned for further interesting items to come up soon. Hopefully we'll have another review for you in the not too distant future. And please, in the meantime, stay safe, look after yourselves. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.